No, it's,
I was going to
drop
your cart. That always catches in my wallet thing like that. Yeah.
But you don't need all these copies if you're not going to hand them out.
Well, if you want to hand it going to the job site.
Yeah.
Have you been by?
We have two firms across the street, but I figured we're going to do the introductions first anyway. They can find out who is who later on. My name is Floyd Barman. I'm the Executive Director of the Clark County Historical Society. On behalf of the Historical Society and the County Commissioners and everybody in Springfield, we're glad to have you here for a full-day pre-big conference. There are some people that I want to take a little time to introduce because they are key figures in this whole project, and you might want to talk to them throughout the course of the day. First of all is William Brown. He is from more than a museum. He is one of our two exhibition designers. He has been responsible for interpretive exhibit and furnishing design for nearly 40 individual sites throughout the nation. He's an historical advisor for dozens of films and has acquired artifacts and furnishings for exhibits at nationally recognized sites such as Abraham Lincoln's Springfield, Illinois home, Washington headquarters at Valley Forge and Morristown. There's probably not a site, as far as the National Park Service is concerned, around the country that hasn't been touched somehow by Bill Brown. David McLean is our other exhibition designer. He is a designer, illustrator, art director, senior exhibit designer, and he has been on the interpretive teams for exhibition design for over 200 museums and historic sites across the country. And he has also worked on a number of projects in foreign countries and has been directly involved with designing exhibits for over 100 museums over the past 28 years. Some of the sites that David and Bill have worked on include Ellis Island, St. Louis Arts Museum, Gettysburg Visitor Center, the Presidio in San Francisco. Stephen Sharp is our principal project architect, and he has served on the architectural teams of several major building projects here in town, including the Clark State Center of Performing Arts and Springfield Museum of Art. Dave Fisher's not here. He's across the street helping some firms get their plans, but David Fisher is our other project architect. He also works for Sharp Architecture, and he is a major contributor to the project and has done a lot of the on-site work with the architectural, with the contractors across the street. Incidentally, the museum that we're designing is right across the street. So when you go out for lunch, you can look through the front door and see this mammoth building, which is soon to become the Heritage Center. Okay. Thomas Loftus is the Clark County Historical Society's agent to all of this. He is the facilities chair, a member of the board, and he has assisted us in just about every important aspect of the project since its inception in 1995. It doesn't seem like we've been doing this for 6 years, but I guess so. He is also the person most responsible for ensuring us that we all stay within the funds that we budgeted for the project. And so he'll keep a tight finger on the funds. Virginia Wygant, who's in the back, in the blue, is the Clark County Historical Society Senior Curator of Collections. And she has worked closely with the designers to provide research and graphics and artifacts, and is presently directing the conservation of the objects that we have slated for the permanent exhibit and core exhibitions. She is a person you're going to work directly with to get the actual material that you'll use in the exhibitions, and you'll hear more from her later on this afternoon when we tour the staging facility where a lot of this material is presently stored. Jeff Johnson, is he here? Well, when he does show up, Jeff Johnson is the Assistant County Administrator, and the county is very much involved with this project. A year and a half ago, they boldly enacted a 1/2% sales tax here in the county. All 3 county commissioners voted for it, and it brought in a great deal of money to ensure the construction of the project was done. So the county has a very big stake in this project. Bill Schwartz, I know he's here. There he is. He's the site manager for the project, and he is the person that is monitoring access for the site during the project. So he's the person with the keys. You've got to get to him, and the hard hat. And incidentally, he asked me to mention that when we take the tours of the building, we should stay together in groups, simply because there's a lot of holes in the floor, and we'd hate to lose the exhibit design firm from the first floor to the second floor, or excuse me, from the second floor to the first. Carolyn Thaxton is up at the registration table. She's our office manager, and Barbara Brown, our development secretary. They're both recording the conference, along with it getting down on tape. Especially important to know Carolyn because the successful bidder will be being paid by her. She's the person who'll write the checks. So, Carolyn Thaxton is her name. Leave gifts at her door, right, Carolyn? Steve Roca is not here. He's from the Ohio. He's going to be showing up. He's our representative from the Ohio Arts and Sports Facilities Commission. The state of Ohio is also committed to the project, $4 million. So they're very interested in monitoring the success of the project. Robert Brown, from More Than a Museum, he'll be the CAD operator today. And I believe he's the person who is most responsible for recording the drawings that you've been picking up. Fred Boomer, from Boomer Photography, is the person that has been doing most of the shots of the graphics that you'll be using in the exhibit. And he's put most of them on transparencies now, which is eventually there'll be about 80% of the graphics. Okay, done. Paul Cronley is our AV man here today, making sure that we're legal, that everything is being recorded, and he's also done a lot of the AV development material for us during the campaign, which was very successful, still going on, still very successful. Bert Kumaro, way in the back. Bert has been with the project for a long time. He is the former director of the National Museum of Civil War Medicine in St. Mary's City down in Maryland. He is now an independent consultant, and he is directly involved. We're contracting him to do, he's already done the audio tour script, but we're contracting him to do the pre-production services on all the AV programs on the second floor of the Heritage Center. He is also going to write and direct the design for the exhibition catalog. So we're going to have him talking a little bit about those two things later on. Craig Donjas is not here. Casey Ikenzer, is that the right way? Is our registrar, and she'll be over at the other, available for questions at the other facility later on this afternoon. Okay, we've gotten through all the introductions of the chief people. And I'm going to turn this now over to Tom Mockris, who's going to give you an overview of the Heritage Center project.
Thank you. Again, welcome. And for those of you who are not from Ohio, this is our typical March weather. We normally have this starting in February, but basically, just to give you a big picture, and because there's a lot of material to cover today and a lot more detail that's important to you in your preparation of bids. But just to back up, the building that we're converting is a building that was built in about 1890, 110 years old. It served the city in various capacities as a jail, police station. Police kept their horses downstairs. It's been a city building. Was converted unsuccessfully into a multi-mixed facility a number of years ago. It was basically donated to the county to give to us for a historical facility. It's about 50 feet wide. It's about 450 feet long. There's an elevation change on the first floor of about 3 feet from the one end to the other. So it's an interesting building for the architects to work on and for exhibits to be placed in. The building, the financing for the project is fairly complex. It combines local money, which Floyd alluded to, in the form of a 0.5% sales tax that was imposed for 1 year. That money was put into this package. In addition, we received a grant from in fact, to back up, it's about $5.5 million came from that package. About $3.5 million from the state in the form of an award grant. Federal government did kick in some money, which was used for relocation, and so we've had federal rules, we've had state rules, we have local rules. And then we've raised private dollars in addition to that. As a separate aside to that, as you may know, the difficulty in these is not necessarily building them, it's operating them after they're built. And so we are in the process of a $5 million endowment campaign, of which we're a little over $4 million pledged, and most of that collected. We will have that shortly after we open, and that will help to underpin the operation along with its various other sources of funds. That's kind of the big picture. With that, we had selected the architect, going through the process, and as I alluded to earlier, one of the difficulties is that when you have this multiple source of funding, all the various rules that apply can be very frustrating as you go forward. We're down to the last phase to be built, the exhibition phase. And as you will note in your package, there's basically two different projects there. There is a first floor project, which includes some Department of Transportation funding, which is basically federal funding, as a pass-through to the state. That is part of the National Road Exhibition. And so the first floor kind of asks for you for a price on the first floor because we have to identify that. We have to segregate that funding. The second floor is basically a multiple source funding, and it just breaks it down. And you'll see that you're required to give a first floor price, a second floor price. We have a couple alternates in each one of those because they kind of transcend both floors. And they can't be, we have to be careful how we handle that funding. That is the audio tour package and the book, so to speak, telling about all of the artifacts, etc. So those two are, you'll see they're segregated and identified, and it's not to make your life more difficult, it's because we have separate funding sources and everybody has to know where the money goes and where it comes from. We're here today to expose you to that, and again later on there will be a tour of the building so you can get a flavor of the size and the magnitude of that, and then after that there will be a tour, if hopefully your schedule will permit, to go out to the Historical Society, where we have a temporary staging facility and we have most of the artifacts. Now many of the artifacts have already been sent out for restoration, but at least you'll get a flavor of that. Put it in perspective, we have a society here that's been existing, what, 100 years? 101 years? And they've been doing a great job of collecting artifacts. In fact, we have a lot of artifacts, 250,000, something like that. And we're going to only be able to show a very small amount. And those have been pre-selected in the cooperation with our designers, with our local people, Virginia and Floyd and all the other staff, and Bert Kummerow. They have pre-selected those items that will be going on. They, in the process, many of those are already out for restoration at this point. The restoration of those items, unless it's specifically in your package, is not something we're looking to you or that budget. That's a separate item. We handle that on direct contract work. Again, as you have questions today, please feel free to ask any of us. The only area that we have a little concern about, and I would like your feedback as we go through the day. By Ohio law, when we put this package together, we have to stake out a start date and an end date, and we have to tell you how many days you have to complete the project. In the package, the way it is designed today, it says basically when we sign the contract, which we would expect that if the bidding goes well and everything, credentials clear and all that, we would hope to sign the contract by the first week of April. That there is a 210-day schedule. You have 210 days to produce and install. That you have access 70 days before the end of that to the building. So we have a coordination there between making sure those areas are ready to be received, to receive your work, and that they're cleared and the other contractors are out of. That's how the project is set up. If after you hear the project today and outline it and look at the building, if your feedback comes back to me that I'm smoking something and that's totally unrealistic, I need to hear that. And I'd like to hear feedback from you. And if it's only one person says I can't do that, well, I can't make a change. But if the majority of the people here tell me that those schedules are unrealistic and cannot be achieved, then we can issue an addendum. And the addendum has to go out between now and the bid time here, and we'd get it out as quickly as we could so that everybody who's going to bid has the same information and that you're operating on the same deck. We will do that. But I need to know that. I mean, we had to put when you put these packages together, you ask everybody for their best advice, and you put a stake in the ground, and you print it, and you go out with it. But we need to know. That's the one area that we're a little uneasy about. And if after you look at the plans, talk to the parties, see the building and the artifacts, you're uncomfortable with that, I'd like to hear that. If I don't hear that from a majority of you, then we're going to stay right there. And by the way, if we make a change, you will receive it in writing and addendum. And there are other issues that Steve will talk about later. If you have questions that we don't have an immediate answer for you, we're going to get those out to everybody so that they'll all have it at the same time. With that, again, my part finished except to monitor today. We do appreciate your coming, appreciate your time. We wish you well in the bidding, and we'll look forward to working with you over the next few months. Thank you.
Have Steve get up and talk about the review of the bidding requirements and the procedures for asking questions today. Before you do, I would like to pass this out. Is that all right? Okay. We have, this is going to be sent to you this week in the format of an addendum, and I'll just read it to you. We are requiring every bidder, incidentally, to submit on or before their bid deadline a summary of qualifications as specified in your project books. In the section related to instructions to bidders, I think it's page 1, paragraph E. So that information needs to be forwarded to my office, and then I am going to be sending it to the exhibit designers, or taking it, hand delivering it to the exhibit designers for grading. So every potential bidder has to have a summary of qualification. It's outlined in your bid documents. I'll pass these out while Steve does this thing.
Well, hello. My name is Steve Sharp. I'm the architect, and welcome to Springfield. I have the really boring job of trying to relay to you folks the rules of the road. And Bill Brown and Dave McLean and Floyd Barber, they get all the glory. They have all the fun stuff and the models and all that. But because you people are not general contractors and many of you are from out of state, I wanted to take a little time to go over some of the questions that we receive as architects from bidders to make sure that when you go to all your work to submit a price that, you know, there's not going to be an entanglement that's going to really foul up the works. So, the spec book is this part. There's 2 documents that make the bidding project. The spec book and then the drawings, which all of you have. And then there will be any clarifying addenda. For instance, there's going to be questions that all of you are going to have, and I've asked Bill Brown and Floyd Barman to take notes so that then we can give written responses to the questions. I mean, it's not that you can't talk to them today, but so that everybody has the same information and all of you are on the same playing field. And, oh, by the way, all you people in this room, this is your competition, because this is a mandatory pre-bid meeting, so if you're not here, you're not bidding. Going through it roughly, the notice to bidders that was sent out to all of you says that the bids are due on the 17th, that's a Friday, it's in a week and a half, and it goes to 50 East Columbia Street on the 5th floor. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Springfield, it'd probably be to your advantage to walk 2 blocks that way down to Columbia. And you'll see this funny narrow brick and glass building. It'll say municipal courts and county offices on it. And that's where you're going to take your bids. Now, the procedure of Clark County government, and this is a county project, the procedure is that they have a clock in their main reception area on the 5th floor. And when it ticks 9:30, then they won't take any more bids. So make sure you're not late. And more importantly, as you enter the building on the 1st floor, there's metal detectors, and there's the sheriff's deputies. So give yourself enough time to get through there, particularly if it's a court day, the line jams up. So this goes slower than the airport. Okay, so give yourself plenty of time, because, you know, if you're on the 5th floor at 9:31, it doesn't matter, you're out. So just beware. You're to submit your bids in a sealed envelope. And if you, in the notice to bidders, it talks about you're supposed to have the name of the project and your name on it, and it tells you where to go, all that. What we want you to do is simply Xerox the bid form out of here in duplicate, and then you'll put that, you'll fill it out, and you'll turn it in. The one thing that we get the most question on are the bonding requirements. Because this is public money, a bond is required. So you can turn in a bond for the full amount of the bid, and that would be in the items 1 and 2 plus the ad alternates. Or you can turn in a certified check or a cashier's check in equal to 10% of the bid, and that would be payable to the Clark County Commissioners. Now, it's all in here, but I'm trying to tell you. If you turn in a cashier's check, then when we award contract, you have to be able to supply a performance bond equal to 100% of the contract amount. So you have to be able to bond yourself to bid on the project. A couple other minor items. The project is exempt from taxes, so you don't have to figure taxes that the state might levy for purchasing materials. And the bid you turn in has to be good for 60 days. That gives the owner and the user plenty of time to make sure everything's all ready to roll. Now, in here's the bid form. And one thing that's happened a time or two is that people try to alter the bid form. You cannot alter the bid form. If you do, you risk us rejecting your bid in its entirety. So in other words, you fill in the blanks when we give you the blanks, and you don't do anything more than that other than sign your life away. The addenda that we're going to issue has some lines in it on the first page, and as you receive the addenda, you just say you received addenda number 1 and the date. Now, you're going to have questions, and you're going to, the reason we say we don't want you to alter the bid form, other than filling out the blanks that we give you, is that we have to try to compare apples to apples. It's up to us to come up with the best viable bid, which is price and workmanship. But in the interim, in the period that we're in now, this is the time when you ask your questions to us to get everything out on the table, and that allows us to do an addenda to get the word out, to either clarify or to modify. Now, the way we've set this project up is quite a bit the way we would do a general building project. As architect, the questions would come into me, and we would want the questions in written form. And here you have our fax number and our email address so that you can get to us. And then the questions will go, if they're technical bidding questions, we can answer that. If they're historical in nature or aesthetics an issue, it would go to Floyd and Bill Brown and Dave McLean, and then they would respond in writing. Now, in the state of Ohio, there's what we call 72-hour rule. We cannot issue any addenda to you if the time of the bid opening is 72 hours or less. So whatever you have to do your homework fairly quick and get into us now. If we, for instance, were to give you an addenda, and this could be faxed to you, as long as that fax makes it to your office before the 72 hours, we're okay. But if it comes after, then technically we would have to delay the bidding. So I ask that you do your homework now, get your questions in now, so it gives these fellas a reasonable amount of time to make a good, thoughtful response. Item 1 on the bid form is the price for the first floor work. The exhibition area is broken down to two floors. The first floor has a national road, and it's Ohio Department of Transportation funding. Item 2 is the second floor work, and then item 3 is a combination of both. In other words, if you think you can save us a little money by giving us the edge and combining items 1 and 2, which is first floor and second floor, into one bid, then that's great. Then give us a price that gives us a little bit of slack, and we can look at it that way. Because we have to take the lowest, most responsible, and we can look at different combinations. Then there are 2 alternates, add alternates, and you can't ignore them. You have to provide prices for them. PE1 is an add alternate for the exhibition catalog, and PE2 is an audio tour pre-production and production price. Now, item 4 are some blank lines for substitutions, and as sort of a gross analogy, what it does is it allows you to say, for instance, there's a shed that has to be built in this, or a little cabin, and it has some nice wood siding on it, and you could come back as a bidder and say, well, if you use vinyl siding instead of this nice wood siding, we can save $2,000 in the project, and then you would enter that in. Now, there's no obligation that Floyd would take the vinyl siding, but it just gives us something to look at if there's something you see in the documents that can cause a substantial savings. But the substitution does not guarantee, well, that does not affect the bidding outcome. It's just something we could talk to you about. Then the county has different forms that they ask you to fill out, and it's included with the bid form. For instance, what they call a non-collusion affidavit, which means that none of you are my brothers and I'm not getting in on the project. Or, for instance, you also have to sign a property tax statement saying basically that you don't owe taxes to Clark County. So that's the bid form. What we're looking for is an all-encompassing bid from all of you. So you're going to have to go out and get the different pieces and the parts. Like, for instance, mannequins. You have to buy some mannequins. And electrical work. There's some electrical work involved here. Oh, which reminds me, Jim Baker, where are you? We have some very good contractors on this project. We have CNN Industrial Contractors as a general contractor. Prism Electric from Dayton is the electrical contractor. And I wanted to introduce Jim just simply because there is an electrical component that somehow all of you are going to have to solve. And I don't know, are there any other electrical contractors here? Where are you from?
York Electric, Dayton.
Okay. Well, at any rate, sometime during the break, if you want to introduce yourselves to these fellows, I'm sure they'd be glad to give you business cards. But there is an electrical component that has to be solved, and it's your responsibility to figure out how you want to do it. I just wanted you to know a person or two you might want to talk to. Okay, instructions to bidders is the next section in the spec book, and basically it just says that we're taking the lowest and best bid. Floyd mentioned the pre-qualification statement. So we're going to be taking hard numbers on the 17th of March. And then before then, you're going to be turning in information to Floyd. And if you turn to page 1 on the instructions to bidders, it lists the qualifications. Okay? And in that, that's what you have to respond to Floyd. And then there's the handout I gave you. Page 4, again, talks about what Tom Loftus talked about, and that is the 210 construction period. And then you're allowed to have access to the building 70 days before. Okay, again, if you have written questions, send them to me. We'll get clarification. There is liquidated damages on this project, so that's why Tom's bringing up this issue at the time of construction. In other words, if you agree, if you sign on the line and agree to do the project and you can't, then we deduct money from you. Okay, so that's why we're serious about saying, okay, give us a good, honest answer about the timeline to do the work. Got problems? We're available. Give us a call. Let us know. Then the next section is additional instructions. What it does is it further describes the project for you. Now there is a prevailing wage section after that. Because there's federal money involved, we use the federal prevailing wage. My understanding of the federal prevailing wage is that when you show up on the property, any work you do has to be paid at the federal prevailing wage rate. Okay? So make sure you realize that when you put your bid together. Supplementary general conditions concern, for instance, on page 1A-3, and concerns the insurance that we require you to have. On page 1A-4, it talks about that it's an all-encompassing bid, including electrical work. On page 1A-5, it tells you that you have to splash release of liens. And 1A-6 talks about payment. In other words, what I'm assuming is that you're going, like with our other contractors, they give us monthly draws. Now, and then you also give us release of liens. have installed to our satisfaction, then we release the retainage back to you. And this is just the way public work is done. There are supplementary general conditions that talk about the fact that this is a tax-exempt project. All your forms, like pay requests, are to be done on AIA, American Institute of Architect forms. Then going on to the next section, it's called Summary 01100. That just gives you a project overview. And then page 2, there's 4 paragraphs that mention that work is to be provided by the Historical Society. We're going to do an addenda that says that that work is to be provided by you, the bidders. And then there's an alternate section, which is 01220, and that starts to describe the 2 add alternates. But then it also refers you further into the back, and that really gets into the meat of what the alternates discuss. Now, during the course of the construction, we're going to need the successful bidder to show up to some of the construction meetings. And the most important thing that company is going to do is provide us a contract schedule that he or she will be required to interface with the general contractor with. In other words, you're going to give a schedule, and it may not be accepted quite, because you're going to have to work with the general contractor, and we're going to have to get it hammered out and everybody interfaced so that the dust is done and out of the project by the time you want to show up. And if you want to bring something early, to make sure that there's space available for it. So we're not saying you have to go to every construction meeting, but you're going to have to budget a few construction meetings in, because we're going to need you on site to work out the installation problems with everybody else. Let me see. Temporary facilities is the next section. All it talks about is there's going to be toilets available to you, there's going to be electric available to you, and the owner will pay for that. Now, if you open up the building, there is a security system in the building that may be operational by then. If you open up the building and off hours, you're going to be responsible for the security of the building. Product requirements is 01600. It deals with deviations from the project. In other words, if you want to do a substitution, it has to go to Floyd for his review, and it just tells you how during the course of the work you can submit a substitution for Floyd to consider. The one thing I want to make sure you realize, though, is that you are bidding per plans and specs, and that really that's what we're expecting to see. Cutting and patching is 01731. There, if you have to do any work on the walls, that is in the general contractor's work, anything like that, if you damage a surface, it's your responsibility to repair the surface, okay? We're not going back to the general. We'll expect you to, if you bang into something, you got to take care of it. Closeout procedures is 01770. There is a substantial completion. You're going to be setting stuff up, and you're going to say, really, we've got everything done except for just a couple of things. So you'll give us a list of deficiencies. The owners will inspect, and then if we say, yeah, it's really pretty well done, then we can go ahead and release the retainage to you. And the final completion of the project is when we have you explaining how all the equipment works. You're going to turn over the operation manuals for the different things you're going to be installing, the motors, all that. You're going to give the maintenance status to the owner, and you're going to do a final cleaning of your work. Not final cleaning of the building, but of your area. And then the last part of the project is really the meat of the project for what you folks really do, and that's the special production packages. And so all I want to say is just read that close. The whole back end of the book deals with, for instance, the mannequins, the galleries, the artist illustrations, the audiovisual productions, the audiovisual hardware, the audio tour production, and the exhibition catalog. And all that's part of your project. So read it and give us our questions, and we'll try to respond as quickly as we can. So, well, I don't see anybody nodding off yet, fortunately. And all I can say is thank you for coming, and that's it. Bill, did you have a question?
Yeah, Steve, one thing probably will come up that wasn't addressed is whether or not between now and the bid day are we going to allow on-site visits after today. And if we are, we need to set up some kind of a system for that, so we don't have 15 people calling every day wanting to get in and out of the building.
I would prefer that everybody look at the building itself today and no other day. If push comes to shove, we can make arrangements to put you in. I think you personally would be more interested in seeing the actual artifacts at the museum than anything else. So,
We'll be able to take pictures today.
you don't have any problems with that, do you? Okay. Yeah. Okay, feel free to call with your questions, and thanks.
Just about ready to turn this over to David and Bill. Two housekeeping messages. First of all, we have a great buffet lunch. If you haven't signed up for it yet, we need a count here an hour before the lunch, so sometime this morning let our ladies in the back know that you're interested for that. The other thing is we mentioned throughout these special production packages and throughout this document that we have listings of people that we have dealt with and the exhibit designers have dealt with in terms of their capabilities on this project for consultants and artists and things like that. That list will be faxed to you tomorrow afternoon. So make sure that those ladies back here again, have your fax number so that we can send you those lists tomorrow afternoon. Bill, Dave, it's all yours. Yeah, could you?
Good morning. What we want to do is sort of take you on a walking tour of the building. This is the second floor, and so this is the first floor. In designing this project, we were trying to do some innovations that have not been done in traditional history museums. And one of those is to eliminate as much as possible huge books on the wall. And what we're going to do is basically the visitor who comes to this museum is going to tour it using an audio package. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with the antenna system, but that's what we're talking about. Now, if you were in a hurry and you only wanted to zip through the museum, there will be some text, but this will not be a text-heavy museum. There will be basic identification panels to tell you what various modules are about, and some of the artifacts that are not obvious, or some that have more importance than others, will have a text panel identifying that the artifact. You'll see that in your packages. But essentially, what we're really relying on here is this audio message that you put on and walk through this museum. If you're really an artifact freak, buy the catalog. The exhibition catalog will be available, and that will give you lots of detailed information that sometimes I know you will have seen in exhibit cases which nobody reads. So that's how we're going to handle this. So the exhibition catalog is a critical element for the interpretation of this museum for those folks who are much more interested than the average person. But the average person is going to go through, and in the lobby of the first floor is going to pick up this audio message system, and they will tour the building through that. It has worked very successfully at the Hermitage outside of Nashville, Andy Jackson's house, and it's worked very successfully at Alcatraz. Okay, so we're going to apply it to this museum. We've got to go through the first floor. I don't know if you all had a chance to look at this model yet. And by the way, the successful bidder will get the model to work for. The models are the original concept. There have been some changes, but those are reflected in the plans. But generally speaking, the flavor of this and the way it flows is exactly the same as the original plans. On the first floor, there is a timeline that begins at the introduction, which is as you come in the front door, and it begins with George Washington. Control the timeline. And the timeline brings you all the way through to, I think, Jerry Ford. Yeah. And the timeline, there is a series of panels. They're all exactly alike, and it contains a picture. It will contain the first timeline in the introduction panel. We've got permission from the White House Historical Association and the National Geographic to use the original portraits of the president. So each one of these timeline panels
we need to light the model.
will contain
There.
You'll have the portrait of the president. You'll have his signature. You'll have a date. And everything above this line is of national significance, and everything below the line is local significance. And all that text is here, and we've got permission for all the graphics. So that will run through this National Road exhibit overhead all the way through. Okay?
Bill, it might be well if everyone, if they could, come up
guys can get up and
and
look
stand
at
it.
what we're talking about.
It would make more sense. It's a little tough, but it's a better way to see it. The overhead thing that we just talked about is this brown.
It's not have to stand around the.
It's not.
That's fine.
This is not a glass wall. This is just how we've had to build the line.
And also the timeline, as we first designed it, was going to be a slanted member. It's now vertical, and Rob can probably pull that up so that you can see a
The visitor will come in the foyer right here. This door will not work. You'll go through here. Here's the introductory panel, and you follow down through here, around, and then you go upstairs. This is a windmill, which is under separate contract. You put in, will actually stretch to the second floor, and you see the map over there. This is a rest area, if you will. It's also for children, where you'll gather classes. There'll be drawers, and they'll pull out, and there'll be reproductions they can handle and things like that. These large artifacts, the Conestoga wagon is being restored. This truck is restored. This truck is restored. This wagon is being restored. I want to show you, Dave, could you hand me that panel with the figures?
Excuse me.
One of the
right.
things we're doing in this museum, since we have, it's so artifact rich, there are almost no reproductions. We are taking what is a reproduction, if you will, and it's done in black and white. These are sketches that were done in the 1840s that we are using. We've got permission to use these. And that's these figures in this little setting. You get over here and you can see a little bit. But you will also notice that there are figures throughout this.
And they're flat
They're
cutouts.
two-dimensional flats. And so we want an artist who can replicate
I knew
this
it.
kind of look. And this artist over here, you're going to get his name, is a very good pen and ink artist. He also has the historical information himself. And when I say, make me an 1835 lady and man, he knows what to do. I don't have to do a research package. Okay? So, this is the artist that we recommend to do this. These are the poles that exist in the building, and we've tried to incorporate those in the design. The other thing that happens on the first floor is that this is an AV component. It's actually a theater that you're going to go in, and it has seating on the inside, and you're going to look at television monitors, and it's basically going to deal with the various kinds of entertainment that's going on in Springfield over the various years. As I don't know, many of you all probably know Jonathan Winters is from this town, and there's a very strong possibility that we're going to get Winters to do the narration for this, pushing up the work of the script.
Multiple monitors?
Yes.
On the same?
Multiple monitors showing the same thing on a continuous loop.
Right, and they're flat
So
screen.
you just slide in this in, and then you come out and you recycle yourself. Let's see what else.
Part of that will be building, these things. All of these we've got in the form of drawings and so forth. It's a marquee.
These are the blades of an actual windmill. This one's a reproduction that's going to go up.
The floor is cut out across here. What we'll probably do at some point is take the other model and set it on top of here, because this goes right on through and sits up. This floor is 15 feet high. The second floor is 30 feet high.
Yeah, this thing goes together.
And as they cleared the building, we discovered yesterday that as you enter, and this is the lobby down here, you're able to see up through this cut. This is a new cut in the floor, but you'll be able to see all the way up through the space.
Now, to deal with one of the more difficult things first, the society has been collecting signage from Clark County for years. And when we saw all the signs, we said 42nd Street and Broadway. So we're trying to give that impression with all these signs hanging up here. So you will be responsible for hanging these signs. And I think when we go out to the Historical Society later this afternoon, I think that's one of the things you ought to look at first, is this signage that needs to be hung.
They were actually donated this past year. Everybody said, hey, I don't need my own sign. And so they went in. It's really...
Some of them have their own lighting, and some of them will be lit from lighting that we're providing. Some of them are neon, and they range in years from, I think the earliest is like 1850 up to almost present day.
Do they have to be special fasteners for them, so you're not tied into the existing signs?
That's what you guys.
There are instances where you'll have to add a tang or something.
Yeah.
There are instances where the signs are of such a weight that 2, pendant points is probably too much of a load at a single point above. You may want to put 6. Single point at the sign, but that many spreads the load out up above where it's from where it's suspended.
Some of them are just vacuum foam plastic.
But
Yeah.
we're allowed to bolt into the signs
Yes.
and actually
Yes.
mar them.
Yeah, that'll be part of there'll be a lot of solutions suggested. Welding something on or actually drilling through, and of course there are all the structural considerations. This top lifts off, and then you can see into the other space. I'll take this somewhere.
So you come up top of the steps, and you have various islands of interest. This is a theater where we're going to deal with the Battle of Pickaway, which is an audio-visual program. Someone can sit down and watch, and have the audio crew will take you through this, and we'll go through this space. Then the final space is this is essentially the military history of Clark County, their contributions to our nation.
His mic's not working. I'm the mic going to the
Okay.
camera. We're recording all this.
And these cases deal with the Civil War. Their collection is fairly heavy in that, and I'm sure you all are well aware how popular that is. This is a parlor from the 19th century that women's conducted a lot of fairs, sanitary fairs to raise money for the troops and stuff like that. So we're dealing with women's contribution here. We will be doing that. That is not part of your big package. And then over here are literally individual soldiers who they've got their stuff. Real guy. This is Fred Smith. He was in the First World War. Here's his uniform. This is what he did then. Each one of these guys go around like that. And when this will have a roof over it, which is now part of a balcony, which you'll see when you get over there. And the reason we've done this way is because all the light-sensitive material, or certainly the majority of the light-sensitive material, is in this area. So this will be light on demand. This is the little building that will need to be constructed. We're going to deal with the manufacture of linen, which is the first sort of commercial product that came out of Springfield. And Springfield is really divided between agriculture and industry, although they go hand in hand, and that's what this is all really about.
Another thing as far as the use of the model, just about everything in here is put in with sticky back tape. So you can get it out and look at it and then stick it back down again. This is travel back and forth and going all over. In fact, yesterday we were putting it back together because the roof fell and all those signs.
One of the few things that you all will have to modify and restore. We have a lot of this iron fencing that was made in Springfield. And this little exhibit here, which deals with lawnmowers and that sort of thing that was made here, we're going to use the iron fencing on it. So that we've got more than enough to do this, but you'll have to cut it in certain places, hook it, weld it together, and then probably prime and paint it all before it's installed.
And the deck, the grass under the mowers is AstroTurf. So we intend to fill the little baskets with cut AstroTurf as some fun.
The surfaces are all indicated on your plans. These surfaces underneath most of these farm implements is almost like a Berber carpet. It actually looks a little bit like. Let me get that piece on.
All right. Is it on the end there, Bill?
This is what's stacked underneath the farm implements.
Plowed field.
That's the spec carpet.
We're using carpet tile in here. Some of the procedures, of course, we'll get into later, but when they lay carpet, it'll be afterwards. We don't tend to put the exhibits on top of carpet. We'll set them in new carpet, and that'll be the last thing that'll be done. And again, that's very important on the first floor, where there's some heavy pieces of equipment that have to go in and sequence in. And actually, there might be some requirements to build a platform, or at least the vehicles can't sit on their own tires. They have to be suspended with 4 points, so that they're like a screw jack, so that they don't just slowly deflate and look like the devil.
One of the things that we've thought about is basically how you guys are going to install this thing. And what Dave and I feel about it is that probably the very first thing that should be done is put all the signs up on the second floor and the lighting. And then come back and put the big vehicles in. You'll have an elevator that's going to come up right here.
It's a new freight elevator just put in.
Freight elevator that you can put this vehicle on, which is the heaviest thing on this floor. First floor, there's also access. Oh no, that's just, yeah, you can, that's not bad, you might pass that out. This is what our suggested phase of installation is. We're not saying that that's the way you got to do it, it's just what we've thought about how you do it. I want to mention the special packages, and the reason we're calling them special packages, originally when the project was first conceived, we were going to contract these aside from you guys. And because of the funding sources that Tom Loftus pointed out to you, they had to be put back in the main package. But we've already developed those special packages and suggested people to do them. For instance, the mannequins in this thing, the three-dimensional mannequins, we've asked for life cast mannequins. Now, as far as I know, there's 3 firms that do that. And we'll give you the names of those 3 firms. And if you want to go and try others, that's more than fine. But we're trying to make it easy. There's 2 mannequins that do not need to be life cast, and we put a name of a firm who does non-life cast mannequins. But the idea of using life cast mannequins is what we want for this thing. We've also got a package for AV software and AV hardware. Because when we talk about the AV program, both of us felt very strongly that when you look at this piece of farm equipment, there's very few people going to walk up and gush looking at a reaper. So we want to see it work. And all these AV programs deal with how these things work. So we're going to see each piece of this equipment working.
You'll take that particular one you're looking at, make it like it used to be, take it out and plow some whatever with
Horse
it.
pull thing, it'll be pulled by a horse.
And there it is in action, and put it back in. When you look at the film right next to it, that's it.
So that's what that thing is. Major artist. We're suggesting that this large mural back here, which starts in the 18th century, and what we want to do is start with something like a log cabin, if you will, and then you move to the next phase and you see the log cabin, and maybe they're adding a wing on it. And the next phase, maybe they're building a brick house, and the log cabin is now being used as a barn, that kind of thing. So you see 4 phases, almost 4 seasons, and you start seeing the machinery that's here on the floor being used on this farm. Now, the artist that we're most familiar with who does this very well is a fellow named Dick Schleck, and you'll get the information on him. Life cast man, the windmill, I covered. Exhibition catalog. Again, for real specific details about the Westcott automobile and the firm and who that guy was and all that kind of stuff, we're not going to try to put that on a panel in front of somebody. That's going to be in the exhibition catalog. And what you're going to be hearing through the audio message are stories, almost, if you will, a radio program about this. So we're trying to make it entertaining, we're trying to make it fun, and we're trying to make it light. And if you want that kind of information, you need to go to the exhibition catalog. And that's where we feel it's a key element to making this whole thing work.
Over here, we originally had a different arrangement. We did trees. There's going now to be a painting of the Indian village and the relationship in the battle here of Piqua.
That painting is being contracted for separately. That's a separate entity.
But for your information, the trees won't be there.
Yeah, it'll be basically a mural that will swing out of the way, because right here is temporary exhibition hall, which we're not dealing with at this point, and they will enter through these doors. So we're basically, if there's something not going on in there, the painting will block your way. If there's something going on, it'll swing back against the wall.
We'll start back with the first floor and go through one time.
You guys can sit down. We'll go back and look at the drawings. And you guys can stop us anytime you want and ask questions.
I'm going to put this on this back. I don't know if that's the floor or it's a mirror. When I see that open, it scares me.
One of the things you'll be getting also is the status of all of these items that are out being conserved, where they are, when they're coming back. Suffice it to say, they're all going to be back in time for you folks to install.
Yeah, that part of it. Walk through. Yeah, we've gone first and second, done a general overview of the whole thing. And what we want to do is begin with, let me step in from here. Well, I'd kind of like to go through what the drawings represent. And I understand you all didn't get the discs. What you're looking at is the disc that produced these drawings. And of course, with CAD, when you want to zero in on something, you blow it up to life size. And that's the benefit, and that's what, it's kind of important that you get the your name and address and so forth, so you get this. The walkthrough that we talked about a minute ago led you through here. There's an intro wall, which is coming out of the lobby itself on this side. You're going past the Conestoga wagon. The contents that were from the wagon are over here. The lines represented here are the flat cutout horses as such. All the contents, here's our first typical case. We have a full set of drawings that show how those cases go together. Moving on further, are the yellow lines represent the cutout figures that you saw from the historic drawings. And across here is a train track going into a tunnel. There are interspersed in here historic artifacts that will be sitting on the platform. Here a cart, and here a shovel-like device that was used for picking up. And then there's someone standing in the background, sort of a casual observer that came up on his bike. There is, I'm trying to remember, this is the one has a bridge, and it talks about the transportation, and there's a large map of the national road that's in this case. We then come to, the surface here is represented in stone, and it makes a transition as it gets here to these railroad tracks and goes to like blacktop. And the blacktop continues on over here, and this center wall divides all this, and it moves on down and out the door into, that's the end of the National Road, and philosophically the idea is that there's this rather modern travel hall. So again, to go back with the railroad tracks, the bridge model, some of these things you'll see in the instructions need to be had pieces added to them. The model itself is an actual historic artifact. We then go into a tavern scene, taverns from two different times. The green lines represent the signs overhead. The blue lines that you see here with the dots are the lighting system. Part of the whole story is that of the bicycle and the social and physical things that it caused. People were, for the first time, able to go off as couples and go have time alone, where it used to be they had to get the buggy out and they probably got a chaperone along with them. So it changed the whole social time. But physically, bicycles caused our nice smooth roads that we have today because they didn't like the bumpiness. And there was a guy that was there named McAdam who would figure out how to, make the rock stay on the road rather than bouncing off. And so there's all of that content is part of the story. Then we have the bases of this and this island are on casters. So that they're locking casters. So these can be moved out of the way should things need to be brought in through here. I'm just outlining the general features that we can go into great detail. Here is an island talking about, on one side, a race that took place here between a trolley car, a motorcycle, and a bi-wing airplane. And we've got the film. It's just phenomenal. And so it's done up in bunting, make it look like the time. On the flip side is talking about the transportation system that was in Springfield with the trolleys. And that side of the exhibit is a continuation of what's happening over here, where we actually mocked up a trolley, as you'll see in the drawings. It's trying to look like, we didn't want to go too realistic with it, but it's done with modern materials and it's painted in colors that'll look like the period. And within that is a mannequin that looks like he's standing right in the front of the trolley. It's behind glass. And then next to it is an exhibit talking about the various homes, the Elks home, the Lions Club home, all these homes. It's called the City of Homes. And the trolley, of course, went from all of that. It was part of the history of the town. And then in the carpet, the yellow lines that you see are the actual tracks. Not physical, but just done with dye in the carpet. We move then to the various events that were happening here with the, Bill, refresh my memory. The first one is...
The first case, that one that David's referring to right now, is a case that presents what we're calling rising hopes and rising fears. Because the reality of the changing social mores of the time need to be talked about. This is the rise of women in the workplace, the rise of the Jim Crow laws, a lynching that took place in Springfield. This is pretty heavy stuff, and we want to present it to people to deal with it. That we're talking about the fact that with these changes in the industrialization and the rise of this place as a major industrial element in this country, it wasn't all kicky-poo. There were certain problems that went along with it, and that's what this case is going to present.
As we have moved you around this corner, again, there's the cart here. There is a pole, which we're making, it is an artifact that is an actual lamp with the little cross piece, and then there's a ladder that goes up there. And the ladder will have to be built to the drawings that we've got and some reference that Virginia will have. And in the background here, these angles, these purplish color lines, are a backdrop of photos that we have bent, folded, and made to look like it goes off in the distance. And we intend to have openings within. These are building fronts, and with certain openings cut from behind so the paper goes across, and we'll have a light that is in the back so that you'll get the feeling of getting dark and the lights coming on in the building.
And that'll be on a continuous loop.
that just cycles through. It's a very simple device. And then, of course, the green line is the rail, which is a standard rail all the way through here. It's all been designed down to on that side for you. That rail will also be architecturally integrated through the rest of the building, up the stairs, etc. And then, as we come to this point, are all of the things that the war effort spawned a great deal of industry here, the pride of the effort of the war, and so there are lots and lots of things here. And the air raid memorabilia, there's quite a few things in this.
Second World War home front, if you will.
Across from it is a mural. Now we're on the back side of this dividing wall, and across from it is a truck sitting in front of a photo. The photo is of the company that truck belonged to. We could tell you stories all day long about acquisition of these artifacts and going out to somebody's, barn, and he says, "Here it is. This is the one that belongs to so and so." So a lot of connection through here. But
Truck made in Springfield, Kelly Springfield truck.
the photo itself is of the company. Yeah. And then again, the railing goes along. Please don't anybody make an exhibit more than an inch larger than it has to be, because these corridors are right down to the minimum. And I think Bill pulled the top off of this theater. The yellow line represents inside the theater a great long padded seat, and on the inside of this wall will be flat screen monitors. Overhead here, the green and purple shape, is the marquee of the theater, which is just a few hundred feet from this building. It's on the side street. And we are, again, using, this is a programmed area where people will sit. They can come in this end and go at that end. And then we're simulating a dressing room back here. Behind the door, you can't get into that space, but you'll be able to look inside and see famous personnel. I got to get some water, excuse me.
One of the things that we're suggesting, and again, this is only a suggestion, is that we mentioned earlier about having the signs for the second floor person and the lighting. The next thing we think that probably should be done is a big optics brought in and put in place, and then the island built around them, and then the last thing, putting the cases up along the wall. This is a gas station from the 1940s, and there'll be a motorcycle which is already in the collection, already restored, and standing next to that motorcycle will be a two-dimensional cutout of somebody who sort of resembles Marlon Brando. And right here will be a bicycle with a young lady who's delivering newspapers. But she's not looking at Marlon Brando. She's looking at this young man who just won the Soapbox Derby race in his 1951, I think it is, Soapbox Derby race. We've got his racer and all this stuff. And so the kid in the Soapbox Derby racer is looking at Marlon Brando, but she's looking at him. Okay, so that's the kind of, we try to keep these things light and a little bit of humor. And then the last thing is this travelall, which has also been restored. And it is got some camping equipment on it. We do not want to give the impression that they're getting out of town. They're merely going out of town temporarily. And in here you have another, you start off this exhibit with an original mile marker from the National Road.
These big stone markers that tell you how many miles that way and how many miles that way.
And it's in pretty good shape. This one over here is another one, but it's really beat up. And right above that we're going to have a sign that says to US 70. So you really see the whole thing from the beginning all the way through this National Road.
The triangle that you're looking at here is an enclosure with a small platform, which is the base for the windmill that goes up. And as well as the windmill, which is being built by someone as we speak, we have over here a small enclosure platform, some guard walls for real historic blades. These are the most phenomenal, as you see in the model.
They really look like sculpture.
They're strange shapes. They're very thin metal, and they don't weigh anything. but they go together in a strange way. They're very strong and they're light. It's like an airplane. And so we'll here have one of those featured before you go up the stairs to the landing, and at this point, that triangle is the opening in the floor.
And
the ceiling.
upstairs, the windmill will be turning very slowly. And there'll be a pole going down through the windmill, which will probably are going to put some sort of black and white markings on so that you actually see this thing going up and down. Otherwise, you won't.
It does a pumping action.
The significance of this is the manufacture of these windmills in Springfield allowed for the settlement of the Great Plains because they could bring water up and start farming.
In the pump.
There were 54, and when this place was at its height with making farming equipment in the 1870s and 80s, 54 train cars a day left here with farming equipment. And this was the place. You want that second floor?
Yeah. The other thing is
When?
the
Please do that.
significance of that pump, the level pump.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that was being made here was the pumps. Do you have any questions about this? If you want to go to any particular exhibit before we go to the second floor? Anything pops up in your mind?
It's sort of three
Yes.
three components here. We have this, we have the drawings, and we have the model. Most of the time, the intent, the aesthetic intent, was to work real hard on the model.
You mentioned that the windmill was being manufactured by someone else. Will that in turn be installed by them as well?
The comment is, so everybody can hear it, the comment is, we had mentioned that the windmill is being manufactured and installed by someone else.
But the exhibition, the furnishing around it, the railing, the labeling and everything else is part of the bid package.
That's right.
And we want the person, the firm there to provide any assistance if there's needed. That is, incidentally, that is 32.5, and because it is not part of the national road scenario, it's part of the second floor bid
What does
package.
32.5 mean?
That's the number.
That's the number of the exhibit. Okay, so it starts on the first floor, goes through the second floor, but it should be counted in your bid package towards the second floor. Then.
It all has to do, as you can see, with ODOT's money coming for the national.
Right. What else? Anybody else got any questions? What we're trying, the reason I'm repeating your questions is we're trying to get this all on the film, and someone else may not hear it, but I've got a mic on, so whether it's working, and then Floyd has some.
This is an existing elevator which we're going to use for handicap. We talked about the steps, and then here's this mural we're talking about, painting of the Battle of Pickwick, which will swing out of the way if there's an exhibition going on in the temporary exhibition. Otherwise, it'll be in this mode right here. And it'll direct you into this audiovisual experience right here.
Something I can't remember. There's a lot in it. That's a long time. Is the construction, the drywall construction of this theater. Did we put that to the general contractor, or did we have that as part of the exhibit? It's part of the bid package. Part of the exhibit. We're going to say the general contractor for guidance to the building, and the exhibit fabricator is what the term I use when it's something that you all do.
You all are responsible for building this.
Yeah. This is a room with a roof on it. It doesn't go 30 feet to the top.
Come out of here. This long shaft that you see down here, I want to refer you first of all to this little compass. This is the actual compass that laid out Ohio, surveyors used. And all of them used it, wrote their name on it and everything else. So we want to talk about surveying and the idea of laying out Ohio, in fact, it's all the squares and why it's done that way, and who were the first people that came over. And having dealt with a lot of this kind of equipment, the public is always curious about how this stuff works. And instead of seeing the surveyor's chain in a big pile, the bottom thing everybody looks at it and goes, what's that? We're going to put the surveyor's chain, there's actually going to be a flat of the surveyor looking down at things. And you can step over here as the public, and there'll be another compass right here. You can look down the transient, see what he's looking at. And Here's the chain going all the way down, and at this end is another flat with a guy with a stick.
It's probably the longest exhibit case you've ever made.
And it's basically just laying flat.
And we talked about undulating the bottom.
Yeah, that's right.
So that the actual.
And this is the case dealing with early settlement of this area. Then you come over to that building we were talking about, which is essentially, on this side is, for intents purposes, a real building, on that side you're looking into it. And then you pass through these exhibits. Heavy stainless floors, the automobile.
It seems probably that steam, but heavy
boiler.
Across here is there's one artifact. It's like a stained glass window that's about this big, and it's a Champion manufacturer. It's kind of on the cover of the thing. And it says one, and we are in making this arch go up and go like that, and you can see it in the model. There's the real one.
That's the top of the arch.
The real one sits on the right. You make a dupe of it on the left. You make two more dupes here. They're like backlighted stained glass windows. And those are the legs for this, those squares. And then they're semi, like used still with angle iron. And at the top is another stained glass window. And that's the one we're looking at. And that's sort of the keystone at the top.
Plow on top of it.
And you got to make it both sides. So there's one real one and one real one. A fake one.
Everything else is
fake one. Fake one. Fake one. You got to reproduce. And the plow on top is chrome plated. It's incredible. Okay, what's the special thing?
This is a very large black white blow up, almost full size of the original building you can see in there. This, by the way, is the door. This wall right here actually slides into this piece, big pocket door, so that we can have access to bring objects in and out.
It drops off about 15 to 18 inches, could we say? So this floor here is higher than this floor, and that's one of the part of the building climbing up the hill. So in order to access for disabled people, they go up a ramp and go into here, and of course this becomes a darkened area as you get in. Lightened when you walk up to a case is light on demand within the space.
These are actually sitting benches right here in this space. They're on casters. This case hinges. This case is on casters. So that all of that can be moved over here or out of this way so that you can actually get a straight shot through here and for future exhibitions. I mean, we're assuming that all the big stuff's going to be brought in here before this is over.
The Civil War scene within this area has full glass walls that go up and intersect with the underside of it. So this becomes a sealed area.
And the access to this case, from the standpoint of maintenance, is through this door right here. In this part.
Historically furnished room. So you go through this glass door. It has to be, openable, and then you go into here, and there's another door. The door there is part of the scene. So it's not a blind door. It's like a door as if it were part of that furnished room. Also notice, when you go see the building, you say, well, why are we looking? What are all these windows here? If you'll notice, we really had quite a time with Steve and some other folks that were here to put a wall within the wall in this building. And that happens on the first floor and the second. So the walls you see in the model are really in a couple of feet, sometimes 3 feet, just enough so that a guy can get back and forth. They can do the duct work and all the requirements that were needed back there. But main thing is we wanted a darkened space and didn't want to have to be battling with nature.
These are enormous windows. I mean, just huge.
These are quite large. You can see the distance from here to here to here is a great long arch.
In the future, for exhibitions, there will be banners that hang at these windows that you can see from outside, but you won't see from inside. Any questions on this so far? Yes.
It looks as if your access to the second floor is bigger than the aisleways between the exhibits
In some cases it is.
Inside. So there are the exhibits to the inside there. Do they have to be captured as well?
It's, no, I don't think so. The thing is to have access, to sequence.
They all meet ADA right now.
Yeah. The thing is to sequence those things first. I mean, it's not likely, though this is a tight aisle, that we're going to take this out.
I'm just thinking of the changing exhibits area and getting freight through to that.
Good point. That's a good point. Our intent will be in this way, in that area to have a modular system to support changing exhibits. So that, and we'll consider the access aisles. Yeah, they could, but the tight point is to get, through here, and there might be some movement and things like this in order to get through there. The temporary galleries are sort of a promise at this point that they'll happen. We convinced the architects to put the black walls up within that space. A recent development kept the ceiling as it was. It has all of these arches and nice moldings and things. Where the ceiling over this room was pretty uninteresting. It's just the bottom side of the rafters, which are, 50 feet outside the building. So, it really wouldn't hurt, except with their electrical requirements. You have to consider. They can plug in to have those on casters.
It probably would make more sense, that was a very good point, to put these 5 island cases on the caster system. Wouldn't we put that in? So,
Yeah, we'd like to suggest that be a note of record, that we will change that.
what we're talking about is access to the temporary exhibition galleries through here after the exhibits are installed. And if we plan to put these on casters and some of them downstairs, but if we put these 5 islands, if you will, on casters, they could also be moved out of the way to allow access to the temporary exhibition.
The Reaper,
This opens right here. So
yeah, but we're talking about the Reaper. This is another harvesting device. This was a small steam engine. These are, this will have to move. These are long. It's really 1, 2, 3, 4.
What's on the other?
5.
What's
Also can.
at your east end?
These open right here, this gate.
I mean, further than 5 years.
You can get all the way through there, but you're going to fold the method against the wall.
Most likely, the little skinny case.
You can come through here, fold this against the table over that. The only other way to get into the temporary exhibition hall would be to come up through the offices at the other end of the building. You can jump all the way up.
It's pretty tough to get up the stairs.
It makes more sense.
We've got a perfectly good, very large capacity.
Let's say
Freight
we're
elevator.
going to put casters on these 5.
Really 6, because this little guy, the AG brand.
Oh, that's right.
Case is also got a big.
It's a very small triangular case right here. So let's say 6 cases here. Make those on casters so they can, lock casters so they can move it. Yes.
Why are you allowing 10 days to bid on this?
I can't answer
That's
that
their
question.
regulation. We were surprised too.
I can't answer that question.
No.
I believe it's, off the top of my head, I believe it's a requirement of the city. I don't know.
It's been out to bid for, I don't know, we started shipping as soon as we got the green light to ship drawings out to people. You would have to ask to have additional time. It could be given to you, but you'd have to ask for it because there's a schedule set, and it just, today's meeting is just simply arbitrarily set. We could have had it earlier or later.
Tom,
We have a question
I think you better answer.
that you have to answer. You have to answer. The question was, why are we only allowing 10 days before the bids have to be in?
The bid packages were set up in accordance with, Ohio ODOT rules, which has to do with the first floor funding, require it to be advertised 3 successive weeks, which we have done. And that is, why was it done that way? I guess Jeff, is Jeff here? It was just set up to be, we were setting up the advertising and the opening in accordance with standard bidding procedures for Clark County, and normally Clark County requires 2 advertising periods. State requires 3, so we went the extra 3. And then the reason we set up, we originally thought about having this meeting a week right after the first advertising, but we thought that really didn't give people enough time to get the plans, to look at them, and have questions to ask. So it was a dilemma of whether you go first week or second week, and we decided to go with it the way it's set up today, give you some time to come in with questions, look at it, have some general idea, and then that's sufficient time after the meeting. Now, whether or not that's too short a period, I mean, that'd be an issue we'd have to ask Jeff. We just legally, we can postpone an opening of a bid or not?
No.
Not allowed.
You have to go back and change the legal ad. You got to start over.
It's
Let me just say that typically in this business, 4 weeks is a modest amount of time to bid on a project. And you're looking at bidding a couple $1 million in 10 days. That's not real prudent. Let me suggest, what you do is your business. I'd like to request that we get 4 weeks from today as the time to submit a bid, because it's just you're asking for so many varied services, and there's no firm that I know of, and I've been doing this for 30 years, that not only does exhibits but printed material and audio tours and so forth. And I think you would be well served by extending that substantially.
Well, extending it, I think you just heard, is not an option. We'd have to start over. But, all right, we need to hear the comments, and we'll have to make a call on that. Yes, sir?
I would echo that sentiment. Typically in this industry, when we're in a hurry-up situation in terms of estimating, it just raises your cost, because there are so many variables in a project like this. It's not like a standard general contracting project where we can apply square footage or formulas to it. It's all custom work.
Okay, go back to your original question. I mean, the reason it was set up was strictly in accordance with bidding requirements under the various funding sources, and if in fact there was some naivete on it, it would be on our part. And in experience, it's not something that we build all the time. It's an unusual little animal, and we'll have to take that under advisement. Anybody else care to comment on that? While it's an issue on the table, we'll have to make a call and let you know.
Actually, I echo the same sentiments about that. I think it's too close. The rules probably were established for a different type project, nothing like this. This is pretty complex. I think it needs more time and thought. Because people, like the gentleman over there said, you're going to pad your numbers to cover yourself, because you don't have the adequate time to do this job properly. So you're going to spend more money. So you got the decision: you want to spend more, or do you actually want to extend the time and get some good numbers that are not inflated just to cover your back. So.
Anyone else comment-wise? Yes, sir.
I don't think anybody within the room would disagree that you do not have adequate time to properly bid this project. But you're not by any way going to get the best bid for time.
Okay, yes, sir.
Just the other impact of the bonding could impact the timing as well. So it really compresses a lot of things.
All right, I'll tell you what we'll do. We will, Jeff Johnson, who came in a little late this morning, is the Assistant County Administrator. We'll have to put our heads together, and we'll try to make a call on this, what is legal, what is not. We'll need to get the county prosecutor to rule on a couple issues, and we'll make a decision. It may be that we have to stay with it. I alluded to this earlier. One of the difficult issues I have to tell you is that we have so many varied funding sources here, and we do have a gentleman join us here late, Steve Roca, who is with the state of Ohio. He is an architect, and Steve, if you'd raise your hand back there. Steve is with us, and they, of course, are also a major funding source here, and so we're going to have to put our heads together, Steve and Jeff, myself, and just see whether or not this is even legal, practical, and whatever. And we'll talk here shortly and try to render some opinion to you if we can get that back to you quickly. Apologize for that. If there's an error on that part, it's really mine. As I say, we deal mostly construction standard projects, and if it's in an experience level, it's my call, my error. But appreciate you pointing it out. We may have to live with that, in which case I hear you loud and clear. We don't have a lot of pad room, so obviously it's in my best interest, our best interest, the project's best interest to get it as competitively priced as possible. But that there are some issues there that raises that isn't quite easily dismissed. So we will put our heads together and try to come back to you, maybe even yet today. We'll try to do something before you get out. Okay? Thank you.
Other questions so far?
Got one back here.
It's made mention in here that we need to pull an electrical permit, but it doesn't specifically say whether we need a building permit or not. I know we're putting up some drywalled walls. But
You don't need a building permit.
We don't need a permit for that.